U.S. support for Ukraine. Paul Rieckhoff on this now, host of the Independent Americans podcast, co-founder of American Veterans for Ukraine. So the other thing, Paul, I think to me, the way I read it is whatever the front lines are now, they'd probably be negotiated so Putin would get land, which has always been what Zelensky says he's not going to give in on if this is the Trump plan. What do you make of it?
Well, it would be a victory for Putin. And I think it's a pretty ridiculous plan for the United States to promote, for NATO to support, and for Ukraine to even consider. To say that Ukraine needs to go to the negotiating table with a war criminal who's invaded and occupied their country, continues to assault their cities, and holds 19,000 children as hostages is absurd. These might be the same kind of people who would say that Poland should negotiate with Hitler when they were occupied. It's really a ridiculous thing. It reeks of some kind of populism. And there's also no indication that Trump has agreed to support it. So it leads us into the debate, which is coming up and will be a great differentiator. We're going to see where Trump and Biden stand. And I think Ukraine is going to be front and center.
Yeah, General Kellogg, who worked for Trump, was one of the people supposedly behind this. We put up the Reuters headline, which was exclusive to Reuters, about this plan to halt the military aid unless there are peace talks. Here's the quote: the strategy outlined by Kellogg and also by Flights, the most detailed plan yet by associates of Trump, who said he could quickly settle the war in Ukraine if he beats President Biden. So that idea, Trump, that's what Trump says. As you said, we don't know if he endorses this particular plan. I'm sure he'll be asked about it tomorrow night. But this idea of quickly ending the war.
I think it's ridiculous. I mean, it's the idea that you can wave a magic wand and create peace in the largest land war in Europe is ridiculous. But again, it's the kind of thing you say if you want to get elected. I would expect a lot of folks to try to say they can do a lot of things that they can't once they get in office. I think it's important to remember, too, the U.S. didn't used to negotiate with terrorists. That used to be our stance. And now to say that an ally and a likely member of NATO has to negotiate with a terrorist organization, which is essentially what Russia has become. Putin is being widely considered a war criminal by most of the world. We wouldn't negotiate with Osama bin Laden after 9/11. So to ask Zelensky and the Ukrainians to negotiate with Putin, I think is ridiculous. And this is politics, man. I mean, it's definitely election season, and everything is going to be a political issue, and people are looking for votes. So maybe there's a proposal to Trump, hey, if you do this, if you propose it in the debate, maybe it'll help you with a swing state. But national security has got to be bigger than politics.
I guess the alternative question then on Ukraine is then what, if not this, then what? How do we get out of a situation that's been a stalemate for a very long time and prevent it from just staying that way for a long time to come?
We lean in harder and support Ukraine to victory. The outcome here that we want is Russia leaving Ukraine. Stop attacking Ukraine. Stop taking thousands of children. Stop committing war crimes and raping women. When Ukraine has their sovereignty back, when they are no longer under attack by an outside nation, that's how we get to peace. But peace is really going to have to come through Ukraine's victory, and the U.S. can do more. We can accelerate the weapons we're providing. We can do more to rally our allies. We almost lost funding here in Congress that really paralyzed Ukraine. So think about where they could be if they had F-16s 2 years ago. Think about where they could be if they had Patriot missiles and all this funding 2 years ago. They're finally getting some momentum back, and now is not the time to pull the plug. It's the time to put the pedal down.
I want to shift gears with you for a moment, Paul. Paul's the host of the Independent Americans podcast. We talk to you all the time about independent voters. I'm wondering what your take, looking at it through the prism of an independent voter, is on that really interesting race here in New York yesterday in the primary, where progressive Jamal Bowman, member of the so-called Squad, lost, right, in the Democratic primary. A guy named George Latimer, who's the Westchester County executive, seen as more of a moderate Democrat. What did you make of it? A lot of outside money, as we see here, from groups affiliated with the Israel lobby may have helped. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I grew up just north of that district, so I know that area well. My grandmother lived in that district for most of my life. So I think really what you saw is Bowman was a radical, out-of-touch guy. This is the same guy who pulled the fire alarm and said he didn't do it intentionally. So I think he should have been out of Congress after that, just based on an integrity issue. I think it's a good thing for the Democrats because now they'll have a moderate that will be more competitive with independents. If Bowman went forward as a Democrat in the general election, I think he would have gotten clobbered, not just because he's really said some anti-Semitic stuff, but because he's very, very left-wing. He's a part of the Squad with AOC and others. And that part of New York and really much of America isn't going for that anymore. So So the Democrats are maybe getting ahead of the curve here, putting a more moderate candidate forward that can potentially attract more independent voters, because that's really going to be the key, not just in the presidential, but in so many key congressional districts that are purple or on the edge between the red and blue that are going to be up for grabs and are going to determine the whole power structure within the House.
Do you think more of this is to come? I mean, a lot of people are looking at Cori Bush race.
I do. I think Cori Bush is next. I mean, and AIPAC has said that. I mean, they said Cori Bush is next. You know, there's obviously a pro-Israel PAC here that's pouring a lot of money, a pro-Israel lobby. Over $20 million went into Jamal Bowen's race. So the stakes are very high. But I think radicals on both sides are losing. And that's what we're seeing, is that the country is much more moderate, much more independent than the radical fringes of the Democratic and Republican parties. So I think that's the real message here. People who can talk to the middle, who can talk with moderation, who can talk with respect, and keep in mind national security, the economy, inflation, the border. If you can be a moderate and an independent, I think you're going to win.
Thank you, sir. We'll talk to you again next week, Paul. Okay?
Anytime, Connell.
Paul Rykoff with us here, 32 past the hour.